Thanks very much, Sam.
Keith?
Now then, oh, I nearly got that all wrong, didn't I? It's the stress, friends. Now, I've done the initial part, but I suppose this part, it's with great regret that Norman Lamb is unable, the Minister for Health, is unable to be with us this afternoon. That's because he's attending a debate in Parliament on dementia, and that is a priority aspect of his job as a minister, to deal with parliamentary affairs, and nobody really questions that. But in his place, we're very pleased to welcome Baroness Liz Barker, who speaks for the Liberal Democrats on health in the Lords, and I'm sure that David will, in his opening remarks, will say more about those sorts of arrangements and Norman's apology. On behalf of BAC, I want to say that we're very proud of that our whole mission in our work is to champion the need for people to be involved in debates on the changes to policy. And so we do not, while we don't claim any good news that the Minister isn't here, we are very pleased that this gives a focus on the essence of the thing, that we're not just commenting on policy. We have an opportunity to debate those policies with our local representatives and to be able to take those things forward. We want to encourage a discussion of things that affect disabled and older people, people living in supported or using supported housing accommodation, which is where BAC's contracts for work lie. But we want to see a world in which the debate is the democracy rather than the process of electing representatives every 5 years and then feeling, well, they didn't do what we wanted. Anyway, that's enough of my politics. But what we're here to do today is to ask big questions of what we actually understand social care is, what are the actuality of the development of policy under the title of personalisation, what do we mean by integrated care and support, and the big questions of who pays and how much and when and how and all that stuff. And there's loads and loads more questions that no doubt will flow from you, or I hope they do flow from you, this afternoon. Now the real point of, or my real need, is to tell you the requirements of the meeting and where things are and so on and so forth. Well, Sam has made the announcements about car parking. The next thing is that there is no need to think that the fire alarm, if it goes, isn't serious. It is. If the fire alarm sounds, we need to evacuate the building. And that is through the doors to my left and right, and so therefore to your right and to your left, to the car parks, to inside there. Toilets are back in the reception area of the main building, in the cafe area, and also there is a disabled toilet in the corridor at the rear of this hallway. We will have a tea break around about 2:30 in an hour's time for a short break. We want to cut that down as much as possible because we want to spend as much time as possible having a question-answer debate with Baroness Barker and the other presenters from voluntary organisations here, including Janice Simpson from Adult Services and the local authority. I ought to give you the agenda will listed the speakers, so the only area that is different from that list is the fact that Norman Lamb is not with us, but so substitute the name Baroness Barker for that part. So without more ado, I need to welcome David Ward to make his presentation. Thank you very much.
first of all, thank you very much indeed. Thanks to everybody for coming along today, and certainly to all of those who have been involved in what's been now going on for many months. And a special thank you to Phil in terms of today and the organisation today, and the fact that there are so many people here is testament to the work that clearly he and his colleagues have been doing to catch you all here today. So big thanks for that. I mean, this issue of social care, and I hear lots of people talking about climate change and the economy and everything, but to me, this is the big issue, the whole issue of social care, and how we're actually going to be able to afford it, but deliver it at the level that we actually need. It's the big issue that faces our society and many others. So it's crucially important that this bill is brought forward, but also that the bill, when it becomes an act, contains what we need it to contain. I was coming back on the train last night and reading, just so happens there's a debate on dementia, which you mentioned. With all due respect to Liz, by the way, or Baroness Barker, prefers to be called Liz, by the way, so when you speak to her at some point, I'm sure you'll please call her, and not your Royal Highness or anything like that, but Liz will do, I'm pretty sure. But with all due respect to Liz, I nearly said that there's no one other than Norman, there's no one better to be here. Well, there is probably, maybe Paul Burstow, because we've actually had a bit of bad luck really, because we had Paul Burstow booked when he was the minister before the reshuffle, and Paul was the one who was heavily involved in the design of the white paper and the bill, and was obviously going to see it through the House of Commons, and we booked him to come along to the event, and then there was a reshuffle. So Norman then took over, and he's now the minister with responsibility for this, and then we booked Norman, and we only found out very recently that there was a debate today in the House of Commons. It's about benches debate, and on the issue of dementia. And the request for the debate actually came from Paul Burstow, so he's got to be there as well. So blame Paul Burstow really. What they do is have the opportunity to dictate what the debate will be on, but not when the debate will be. So unfortunately it is today. But there has been a paper produced, as there always is for debates in the House of Commons, on the topic of the day. And you will know this, but it stands very clear, the stark evidence of how serious this is. And this is actually an article, I think, by the Alzheimer's Society, but 1 in 3 people over 65 will develop dementia at some point in their life post 65. So just think, look around the room, think who that will affect. How many people, 800,000 allegedly currently, have dementia, and that is projected to grow to 1.7 million over the next 20 to 30 years. These are terrifying figures in terms of the huge demands that will make on any government of any complexion. It's an indication really of why this bill is so important, and it's why we need to make sure, as I say, the final act contains everything that we would want it to contain. The report that we've done, you've got an executive summary there, and I know you won't have had time. I'll just quickly go through the findings. We've changed this from recommendations. At a very late stage, we were going to have key recommendations, but it was important, really, that if we are going to reach a long-term, sustainable policy and programme to deal with this issue of social care, it must have a political consensus. It cannot become a political battleground. And this is not a political report. This is not a report which has recommendations as a Liberal Democrat Member of Parliament. It's simply the findings that you, many of you who have engaged in this consultation exercise, it's your findings as much as ours. And what we are simply seeking to do, and I feel this in particular a heavy responsibility, is not just to ensure that there is a debate that takes place down in Westminster, but that Bradford, the context of Bradford, the characteristics and demographics of Bradford are included in any legislation that takes place. There is far too much. I'm only a relative new boy to the House of Commons, but the South London, Westminster-centric approach that too often, in my view, sadly, is incorporated into legislation is something I'm constantly trying to fight against. So all I'm trying to do is make sure that we, as people who care passionately about the North and Bradford in particular in my case, have our say, have our input into what would finally become legislation. So just really quickly going through the findings, and they're in various areas. The issue of care funding, of course, is absolutely crucial. What we found when we were talking about the bill and the white paper, there was some common agreement really on the basic principles contained within the white paper, but there was huge concerns about the funding, the future funding. So a finding was that research is needed on the impact of the Dilnot Commission's proposals in more deprived local authorities such as Bradford. That needs to be contained within it. Finding is that there is a strong support for funding social care reforms from within government spending on older people. The knotty issue which the political parties are going to have to face of universal benefits. This isn't the time for political discussion, but there needs to be a political discussion about universal benefits whereby, for instance, millionaires are receiving winter fuel payments. We have to have that discussion. The finding was that the consensus view is that the Dilnot funding reforms should be implemented as soon as possible, including the cap on the lifetime cost of care. In terms of access to care, we found there is overwhelming support for maintaining Bradford's home care eligibility threshold at moderate. That comes, of course, with a bill. There is a finding that there is a strong argument that Bradford Council should ensure that self-funders can take advantage of the Council's buying power to access services at local authority funded rate. This is to do with the difference between the self-funded and the LA funded rates. In terms of prevention and integration, there was finding was that there was a clear need for Bradford Council to review the delivery of adaptation services and find ways to drive down waiting times. That comes with a cost. But the finding was that our research was that Bradford Council's housing department should have representation on the Bradford and Airedale Health and Wellbeing Board. Time and time again, we are seeing the contribution that housing makes to so many other agendas. It's not just about a place to live, whether it's to do with education or whether it's to do with health. There is a significant link there between the state of housing and the state of and other agendas. In terms of the minority provision, there's evidence that suggests that Bradford Council should increase efforts to raise awareness of care services among ethnic minority communities. There's a finding was that commissioners and providers need to look at how services are developed and delivered, and just as importantly, how those services are accessed by other particular minority groups. And this is the older lesbian, gay, and bisexual and transsexuals. On the personalisation agenda, widespread support for it, there's strong support for the personalisation agenda suggests that Bradford Council should accelerate the introduction of personal budgets. On the issue of quality, there is a strong argument for Bradford Council to take a greater role in driving up standards among independent sector care providers. These are the findings, not our particular recommendations. And then the last area was to do with loneliness and isolation. The finding is there is a need for the council and the government to work in partnership with community organisations to develop innovative schemes to support older people living in social isolation. And the final one is possibly a recommendation, and it could be worthwhile for the council to trial using its neighbourhood teams to support older people in their homes. So those are the findings, but that is the executive summary that you have before you. We are preparing a full report which will incorporate today, and the things that are said today will go into that final report. Paul Burstow, I mentioned Paul's involvement formerly as the Minister. He now chairs the joint House of Commons House of Lords committee that will be scrutinising this bill as it goes through. And I spoke to Paul this week, and he has invited us to submit the final report to that committee for them to look at as part of their deliberations. So I don't want to pinch time off others. I know you've got very short time limits on your own contributions, and I also very much want to leave time for the question and answer session, which Liz will be involved in. We've done a lot of work. We distributed 30,000 surveys right at the very beginning. Don't worry, the government didn't pay for that. We did do that ourselves. But we have then followed that up with working with many groups who have then approached their members, and we're really thankful that that enabled us to broaden it outside of one particular constituency. So we feel we have got a Bradford response and not simply a Bradford East response. That's the work that we've done. What we are going to do, I say, is incorporate this in the final report. It's already up to 30 odd pages and growing. There will also be a volume 2, which will be all the submissions from the various groups that have been involved in helping us with this research work that we've been carrying out. And then it will conclude with a submission to the joint committee at the very least, and probably will provide a rich source of parliamentary debates which we will try and introduce over the next year or so. What I would like you all to do, please, is to stick with us, is to continue. This isn't the end of it. Even when we've submitted the report, it will not be the end of it. The legislation is going to take some time to go through, and we want you to monitor what that legislation is proposing and to continue to work with all of us to ensure that we do the best we possibly can for the people of Bradford. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David. I want to invite
Look, this is not the what the church say. It's not the beginning of the end, or the end of the beginning, or the middle of the end of the beginning of the. This is going to go on. I don't want this to be the end of things. We have still got a report to submit. That won't be done soon. But even after that, the legislation is going to go through over a long period of time. We're talking possibly 18 months, 2 years, something like that. I think that's the time scale. So there is still the opportunity to contact me, or indeed your own MPs. They will be voting on this as well. Contact your MPs or my office with any further points that you want to raise. What I have hopefully clearly shown is that I am still willing to gather information, wanting to gather information. So not only do you can you contact me individually, but I am still very keen to meet other groups and get more perspectives on this legislation as it goes through. So please, that's an invitation to you to contact me and to continue this collection research work that we're doing. I've just got to apologise for Liz. She's actually got to get back to London to vote. I've actually been signed off for today, so thank you. In addition to all the other thank yous, thank you for helping me be here and not in London today. And the other thank you is, which I really should have said, was to my own staff. And so it's been, thank you for thanking me. But my staff have worked very, very hard on this over a long period of time. Not only just in terms of the report, but all the surveys, 30-odd thousand leaflets were put out, surveys were put out, and I did not put all of those out myself. It's a big team effort, and so thank you to them. And the very final thing, which I should have said right at the very beginning, was that there is an audio version that I've done of the executive summary, which is available to those who would want that, freely available to them. So, in conclusion, for today, anyway, thank you very much indeed for being here today. But beyond that, and I do mean this very, very sincerely, thank you for all the work that you're actually doing for the people of Bradford, in whatever guise that may be, in form it may take. You are doing an incredibly important job for a group of often very, very vulnerable people, and I personally thank you for that, and I mean that very much indeed. Thank you.